One day after the New York Times hit piece on our 5G coverage, now the Wall Street Journal has published an article titled "Russia and the 5G Cancer Scare," criticizing this network's reporting on the impending dangers of 5G. Now, our reporting on the subject is not exclusive by any means. Similar reports on the potential dangers of the 5G radio frequency radiation to humans and the environment, it's also been done by CBS, by Newsweek, Reuters. That's just to name a few. And because of the many unknowns that could result from this new technology, there are people across the U.S. now taking to the streets today to voice their concerns to the very companies who are responsible for the launch of 5G. RT's Dan Cohen is joining us live now from one of those rallies over in Bethesda, Maryland. Dan, what can you tell us?
Manila, there are about 40 people now, more than about an hour ago. Crowds are increasing out front of this Verizon store in Bethesda, and you can hear behind me they're chanting demands for a moratorium on 5G, or fifth-generation wireless technology. Now, Verizon, Sprint, AT&T are rolling out 5G already. It's in 21 cities across the United States, and it's in more than 200 cities around the world. Now, they're saying that there are risks to public health, to the environment, to security from 5G. And now 5G is much stronger than previous generations, so it allows for much faster download speeds, but it requires a much more sophisticated network of installations. So in order for 5G to be successful, there would have to be small cell towers installed every couple hundred feet, so on houses, on trees, on buildings, on light posts, all over the place, dramatically increasing the public's exposure to radiation that many experts, scientists, doctors say is harmful to the public. Now, this is a relatively small amount of people compared to last Friday in Bern, Switzerland, for example. 1,000 people came out to protest against 5G. Now, that's the capital of Switzerland, and the U.S. population is 39 times the size of Switzerland. So that would be like if there were 39,000 people that came out in Washington, which is obviously not the case here.
Yeah, Dan, why are there so few in comparison?
Well, one of the factors is how mainstream media is covering it in the U.S., is covering 5G. If you read the New York Times, then you would think from this latest hit piece that anyone who's concerned about 5G, all of these people are under the influence of Kremlin propaganda. And it's the same that we saw from the Wall Street Journal op-ed that came out on Tuesday, that everyone is just hepped up on Russian propaganda and not under their own volition. But if you look at the New York Times, at the investment firms that own the New York Times, well, the largest investment firms that own the most shares of Verizon also own the most shares of the New York Times. So how's that for a conflict of interest?
Yeah, Dan, you've been here at the desk and disclosed to us all of these different companies, and obviously it's a conflict of interest. But what about hard science? What does science say about this?
Manila, in April, there was a huge study that came out from the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers that found that cell phones, including the iPhone 5S, which is already generations old by this point, exceed FCC limits by up to 11 times what's allowed. And last year, in November of 2018, the National Toxicology Program, that is the flagship program of the United States, released the results of a 20-year study ordered by the FCC that found clear evidence that radio frequencies, that this wireless radiation causes, in its words, there's clear evidence that it causes cancer in rats. Now, this is the exact study that the FCC ordered back in 1999, and when the results came out, they rejected it, saying, well, it was done on rats, so it doesn't apply to humans. But this is basically exactly how the study was ordered, and it's common for these types of studies to be carried out on animals rather than humans, of course. Now, on top of that, the FCC is actually headed by a former Verizon lawyer, Ajit Pai. So there's another huge conflict of interest. So with these corporations, these wireless corporations having massive influence in government and media. It's no wonder that it's just a few dozen people out here. Reporting in Washington, in Bethesda, Maryland, Dan Cohen, RT.
All right, thanks for that, Dan. There's a documentary that investigates the potential dangers of prolonged exposure to radiation from wireless technology and its effects on our health. You may have heard of it. It's called Generation Zapped. Here's a clip from the film.
In France, they had some of the first adopters of Wi-Fi. Now they're recognizing that the Wi-Fi is potentially harmful to school children, so they're getting rid of it in elementary schools.
And the director of the film, Sabine E, Gemayel, joins us from California to discuss her documentary and the alarming health risks associated with mobile phone technology. Sabine, thanks for being with us today to discuss this very important topic.
Thank you for covering it.
So what motivated you to direct this film, Generation Zapped? When did you first learn about the effects of EMF and radio frequency waves?
In 2012, I have 3 teenagers, and I was visiting schools, middle schools, and that was the year of the iPad rollouts in Los Angeles. And I was pretty shocked that all kids were handed iPads, the access points were in the rooms, they had smart boards. And when I first visited the school, I looked at all the kids with all these iPads, and I thought to myself, well, this is like kind of like a microwave oven, isn't it? And I started paying attention to it. I was more concerned about screen time and the content of screen times with my kids. And then when I first found out about it, right around that time, I became really concerned about the health impact from the technology that they were using. And nobody took me seriously. Not my kids, not my family, not my friends. And I thought, you know what? I'm a filmmaker. Might as well make a film about it. And people will take it seriously, and they do now.
Yeah, that's a tough place to be the kid of a documentary filmmaker, I imagine. So I understand that your film was shown to employees at Google and at Salesforce. Can you tell us about that experience?
It was very validating. It was also shown at NIH, the National Institute of Health. And so when companies like that who are use the technology and want to know more about the trends and the health effects and what the public is thinking is actually showing the film, it is validating in the sense that it shows that the science is there. It's a well-made film. It's not a film that is fringe or conspiracy theory driven. And that was very validating, because that's the concern of most people who want to know more about Generation Zapped.
Right, it's science-based, so I think it's important to point that out. What role do you think then our government has in alerting the public about this new technology and the dangers that might come with it?
Well, I think it's crucial. It's like GMO, organic foods, toxic chemicals in our water. I think the EPA and the FDA have a very important role to play, and frankly, they're not playing it at the moment on this issue.
Yeah, and they've certainly criticized this network for covering it and saying that there are dangers. A lot of mainstream media are pushing back, but these are corporate-owned outlets like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, who Verizon is shareholders for those publications. And so today we've learned that concerned citizens across 30 U.S. cities are holding rallies against these big tech companies behind the 5G rollouts, many of them raising questions about what this new technology can do to us and the environment. What do you say to the critics who say this is madness, that we're hyping up fears?
You know, it's very sad because I think they're in denial. I think that if the city of Brussels has halted the implementation of 5G in the capital of the European Union, very reason they wouldn't do that if they were not, if it wasn't founded and if there was no reason behind it. So I say to the critics, rather than criticizing it, they need to get educated. It's all about education. I mean, if you think about it, everybody holding a cell phone more than 2 or 3 minutes feel a hot pressure on the ear or various sensations. So isn't that a flag? I mean, wouldn't you want to know more about it if only this much, or so many people are saying that they're having health effects from it, and there's a growing population that is becoming electrosensitive because of overexposure to Wi-Fi and hotspots and their phones and all the technology that you have in your house. There is the concern of being monitored in your house if you have Alexa and all the Internet of Things, and that's a very legitimate concern of knowing that somebody can spy in your house. But beyond that, there are health effects. And if you think about radio frequencies, and you covered 5G very well of why it's different than 4G, so I'm not going to get into it. But if you think of radiation like a line that's traveling, then you think of your house, you see how all your devices and your Internet of Things and everything that you own in your smart house is traveling through you and through your kids. So right there, I think it's a red flag, and people should think about it. And there is research showing that there is evidence. When they say there's no evidence, there is evidence that is harmful. There is research. There's the NTP study, and you actually mentioned other studies that show that there are brain tumor in rats, but there are other studies. And the growing issue with children in schools who have headaches, lack of concentration, ADHD, autism with overexposure in utero. There is evidence
a cause for concern.
Yes, there is.
Absolutely. I think everybody should check out your film, Generation Zapped. We've got the director here, Sabine E. Gemayel. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and insight on this subject with us today.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.